mean, you know, you call the protectors the henpeckers. And they're the types that, like, somebody's choking and nobody's helping, and they go, 911, 911, 911. You're like, you got to do a Heimlich maneuver. Are you trained in that? You know, after you save the person, you're like, you're a hero. Wait, stop so we can have the police arrest you. Arrest someone. I feel powerful when I do. I have no power, but through the system I have power. Okay, I'm sorry. Let's go ahead. I was streaming the consciousness of one of those people. In fact, I'm going to do an imitation of each one of these coming up. I should do a skit today before the nightly news and shoot it with somebody talking to me, and I'll play the part of each one. Anybody ready to go to the costume shop? A little bit of... Let's talk to John in Illinois. You're on the air. Go ahead. Welcome, my friend.
Good morning, Alex. Great show today. You're in top form. 2 quick points. The hot button one, Rand Paul, Ron Paul. As you said many times on the show, he is a focal point. In 2008, we drafted Ron Paul to be our leader. I was with a Ron Paul meetup group. A former CEO of some corporation was in there with us. He said, I cannot believe that this isn't a top-down organization and you're not getting orders from headquarters. And we said, mister, this is grassroots. It's from the bottom up. We drafted him. Okay, remember, before the kickoff to the 2008 election cycle, you had Ron Paul on, and he got about $500,000 in unsolicited donations. I was one of the ones who sent him a check. That proved to him that he was our standard bearer. Now, Alex, what happens if the Ron Paul revolution continues, and it is continuing? They are taking over the delegates. They're taking over the state convention.
Yeah, but they're not doing anything with it. Ron Paul, they're saying, may not even go to the big Ron Paul event they were putting on separate from the RNC because it might anger the Republicans. I'm seeing every sign. I mean, if Rand did a little bit of stuff to just not let the neocons attack him, he's done some of that. I left him alone. But then the Romney thing on top of all these endorsements of neocons, it's a major turn. I mean, there's a lot of people inside the campaign family. They've been concerned. And then now we're told to grow up. Again, the response is so political.
I'm concerned, too, but they could be engaging in duplicity and then turning over. One other point about the police waking up. A good friend of mine, southwest side of Chicago, has a lot of Chicago police friends. And a couple of weeks ago, one of his police friends, his name will only be Pat here, he had a falling out with him because he didn't believe that 9/11 was an inside job and all this other stuff. And he got a call, and he basically apologized to him. He says, you know what? I've woken up, and I'm listening to Alex now. I've stopped listening to Mancow. So,
well, let's not be mean to old Mancow. I was supposed to be on Mancow's show this morning, but I'd promised my children at 8:30 I'd go play with them, and I was supposed to be on at 8, and Mancow called me at 8:30, and I told my wife, don't answer, and she answers, oh, come on the show. So I can't apologize to Mancow, but I can't not come on at the right time. Mancow overall is a good guy compared to a lot of the stuff that's on air. And if he doesn't think it's an inside job and that's always his view, that's fine. The reason Ron Paul and Rand Paul are held to a higher standard is that they were always the guys that were on the straight and narrow. Now for them to change course is a big deal. And they have changed course. And a lot of us, the dam broke on this because a lot of us were in somewhat of denial that we were seeing troubling signs. We're not stupid, like some of their people are saying. We're astute, and we know what we're saying. We are taking your phone calls. Big news blitz coming up at the bottom of the hour, and then I'll continue with calls today. No guess we have time to take a lot of calls. But even David Adams, Tea Party activist who managed Paul's Republican primary in 2010, said, my first thought really was that Rand may be suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. And that's where you love your abusers. Yes, cognitive dissidence, learned helplessness, normalcy bias. Yeah, that's what I've said. Rand and Ron are gentlemen. They're smart guys. And we're going to go over some quotes. Rand has now officially responded. The article and the text is up at Infowars.com. Headline, I'm supporting the party that I belong to. Rand Paul speaks about Romney endorsement. Which, this all started Thursday. It was a firestorm. I'd say 95% of people. In fact, we got to look at the poll that's on Infowars.com and get those numbers later on what our voters there are saying about it. But I've seen other polls, 95% are very upset. I mean, if this is business as usual, why didn't Ron Paul endorse McCain 4 years ago? I mean, Rand didn't have to run out on TV. He could have later said, well, I have some issues with Romney, but, you know, he is the nominee. But instead, it's like, I have a lot in common with him. We know you met with him a few weeks ago. You're being looked at for VP. I know that's been going on behind the scenes. And Rand does make the argument that, hey, we've gotten chairmanships. We're taking over the party. Okay, but you add that with Campaign for Liberty endorsing neocons like Mr. Cruz in Texas, who supports property taxes, and his wife CFR. You add to that the fact that they're not as hardcore as they used to be, that he's endorsing sanctions that his father says is an act of war and shouldn't. I mean, people are like, well, he's Rand. He's not his dad. Exactly. Exactly. But so we don't have to be in a total love affair with Rand. We're not saying he's bad. We're allies with him on many issues, but it's not bad for us, as a bunch of the party operatives have been saying. I mean, here's, again, this article, syndicated column, was in the New Jersey papers, California papers. 2 words for those that upset by the Rand Paul endorsement of Mitt Romney. Grow up. Paul Mulshine. And it goes on to say, one of the problems with the mass movements is they're made up of the masses, and the masses just aren't that smart. You're saying libertarian constitutionalists aren't that smart? I've seen the numbers, the youth, but also the high test scores, the older folks, the wealth level of Ron Paul supporters is a giant middle class, upper middle class, and wealthy movement. I mean, we're not idiots, okay? Constitutionalism is something that people that have been somewhat successful, that don't want to be leached off of, and understand due process of law and protections are important. I mean, now we're unwashed idiots. But, I mean, that sounds like MSNBC. All they do is get on MSNBC and talk about how smart so-called liberals are and how great they are and how they want to manage and run things and how stupid everyone else is. I mean, that really gets me mad. And being lectured by, it looks like 14-year-old, Jack Hunter with his comb over. I'm not trying to be mean, but I mean, it's insulting reading off a teleprompter going, oh, we need to do this. I mean, come on, man. Come on. I'm not buying it, okay? And again, it's the response that's made people even madder. But the big issue is Obama. He's out of control, but his political star is starting to fall. I'm going to cover that later. And so I wish we had somebody better. I mean, Ron Paul kept saying in Campaign for Liberty, hey, keep giving money, keep fighting for delegates. We're going to go in there and demand things and take over. So people would show up at state parties like Louisiana just to get the delegates where they'd won, the most delegates, and they were beat up and sent to the hospital. And Paul's like, Ron Paul's, his dad, Ron Paul, comes out and says, need to be respectful. Oh, I mean, I got news articles where the Pauls are saying they may not even show up at the thing that's been planned for 6 months to have this big counter convention where constitutional ideas are put out. And they're like, we don't know if we can go to that. Oh, yeah. And the Republicans are saying they might not give us those fairgrounds. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, we don't know about that. That might upset Mitt Romney. If we have a group of people pointing out big government's out of control, Ron Paul won CPAC 2 years in a row, got standing ovations with anti-war statements, anti-corporate welfare statements. And the Republican Party said, don't have him back this year. Because they're scared. They know what's happening. That's why they cheated and stole and would lie when he won polls and said he couldn't win. And when he did win the first few states, they shut all that down. And now it's like, hey, we're taking over the party. Thanks for the $50 million you gave us the last 2 election cycles. And then they pass over in all these states people who've got great records and who are constitutionalists, for people like Mr. Cruz here in Texas, who's pro-property taxes and a globalist. I mean, look, what's happening is you're not taking over the Republicans. They're taking you over when we had a real chance to really take over the Republican Party. And so we're going to state this. I know there's a bunch of camp followers that want to be able to hang out with the senators and be part of all the people they elect in this new Republican power move. It isn't anything if it's just bought and paid for by the same special interest. And I know I'm ranting now, so we'll go to your calls. But just look at these headlines here. Ron Paul still isn't sure if he's going to his own Republican convention festival, Business Insider. That's freaking people out. David Adams, the former head manager for Paul's Republican primary campaign in 2010, said, his first thought is that Ron's suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. I met with a Coast Guard guy, a really nice fella, a few months ago who was here in town visiting, family with his girlfriend. And we went and had lunch and talked, and he was like, I'm a little concerned, but about playing politics, but and where things were going, and the people in the campaign were concerned. And that wasn't off record. I mean, Rand knew he was at that meeting with me. I've talked to other people that are off record. Some of them aren't off record, but I'm still not going to say what they told me 3-4 months ago that was concerned. I'm like, I'm sure it'll be all right. Well, again, I think it's just the upset is the realization that things have really changed. And later, after I go to calls, I'm going to read over this big article that's got a transcript of the interview he did with Peter Schiff and the video of it. I'm supporting the party that I belong to. Rand Paul speaks about Romney endorsement. There are definitely things in between good and evil. There are definitely things in between good and evil. So he's not just saying lesser of two evils. It's now there's things in between good and evil. Yeah, I mean, if Romney hadn't called for assault weapons bans for 20-plus years and passed anti-gun laws in the state he was in, if Romney hadn't been such a pusher of abortion, if he hadn't written Obamacare, if he hadn't pushed for open borders and amnesty, if he hadn't pushed for carbon taxes, if he hadn't been involved in banker bailouts, if he hadn't been involved in so much bad, there might be able to, I mean, you could say, well, this guy isn't perfect, but we can try to influence him. He's better than Obama. But folks, he isn't. In fact, he's worse in ways because he has an R before his name. And all the conservatives and libertarians that were starting to wake up under Obama, they're going to go to sleep because there's this idea that all these Democrats were upset about warrantless wiretaps, checkpoints, secret arrests, torture, wars. As soon as Obama got in, they're like, we love torture, we love war, we love NDAA, we love banker bailouts. And we're like, you didn't like it under Bush? They didn't care. It's going to be the exact same thing. Do I want Obama in? No. Justice be done, may the heavens fall. I want Obama to go to prison. Let me tell you, the Republicans went after Obama for Fast and Furious, his lying, started impeaching him. Then there were indictments. I would say, whoa, the power structure really understands things are going down if we don't reverse this. Okay, yeah, I'm for the Republicans. But you're not going to see any of that. You're seeing some election time patty cake out there where they are, we're going to subpoena you. We're going to start the debate on you being in contempt, Holder. Holder is in press conferences 2.5 years ago admitting they had a gun running program by name, just claiming it was something else, and that he directed it and was running it with the FBI. There's 8 federal agencies involved. It predates him. They just accelerated it and included hand grenades, full auto, and drug gangs in the U.S. to control it. But Bush was involved as well. That's why Holder said that. I predicted he would say that. Again, I know how they operate. They're so corrupt, none of them can report on the other ones now. Because, you're going to go after the UN for sex slavery? You're going to go after the UN for narcotics trafficking? We'll go after your bank for doing that. Or you're going to go after our politician for this? We're going to go after you for that. They all know. The NSA has it all logged, and whoever the president is and whoever the CIA director is, they got access to all that. And when they leave office, the Clintons still run Washington to a great extent because they took all those files with them. And they use them against everybody. And they know everything. Everything. What hooker somebody visited. What prostitute they visited. What bribe they took. They know all of it. And so there's this unified corruption now rotting to the point of we're now going into terminal corruption where at every level nobody can say no because nobody will call on the other group because even if you're involved in just a little bit of corruption, they're going to get you on it. Or you just want your job and your pension if you're really low level, so you better keep your mouth shut. And so we lose everything. This is how